There's a lot of people pumped up for Rob Gronkowski back in the NFL, but let's find out why Michael Fabiano is listing him as a bust for the 2020 season. Here with me now is All Bucks editor Luke Easterling and Mr. Fabiano. Fabs, I'm going to start with you because you're the one that has Gronk as a bust in 2020. What are your thoughts about the veteran tight end?
How dare I, right? I mean, he's only like the greatest tight end in the history of fantasy football, not named Tony Gonzalez. But I mean, let's be honest here, okay? First off, we all loved OJ Howard last year, but Bruce Arians has never liked to use tight ends in his offense in a prominent role. The only guy under Arians who was a good fantasy tight end was Heath Miller back in the Pittsburgh days. Gronkowski did not play last year. He was wrestling, well, sort of wrestling. He was the 24/7 champion in WWE. The year before, his final year in New England, 3 touchdowns, 31 years old. Now, the advantage is he's going to have the rapport with Tom Brady already baked in from their time together with the Patriots. But the Buccaneers also have Mike Evans, great receiver, Chris Godwin, great receiver. They still have OJ Howard. They still have Cameron Brate. There's a lot of mouths to feed. And I feel like people are drafting Gronkowski because of his name and his past success. And when all said and done in 2020, they're going to be disappointed with the numbers, Bill.
I think you're right. I think a lot of his just reputation is really boosting up his ADP. Luke, I want to get your thoughts on how you think the Bucks are going to use Gronk this season.
Well, I think, when you look at the amount of weapons that they do have, both at receiver and tight end, there are going to be quite a few mouths to feed. And while that will hurt fantasy owners in terms of the production that I think each of those guys might put up, it will help the Bucks as a team because you have so many different guys that opposing defenses are going to have to pay attention to. I think that while Gronk's reputation will hurt him in terms of fantasy value and the return on that for fantasy owners, I think it's going to help the Bucks even just as a decoy on the field, as a presence. Opposing defenses are going to have to pay attention to him, and that leaves less attention to be paid to 2 Pro Bowl wide receivers in their prime in Chris Godwin and Mike Evans. It's going to leave less attention to be paid to other tight ends. Like you said, OJ Howard and Cameron Brate are solid options as well. They're going to have all 3 of those tight ends on the field at certain times, and they're going to move those guys around. I think that will allow them to keep Gronk on a pitch count, keep him in very specific situations where red zone and third down, you're moving the chains, you're making plays for touchdowns. They'll get a lot of bang for their buck in terms of the moments that they put him in. But in terms of a season-long projection, in terms of big numbers, I just don't expect to see that.
All right, so we know Fabiano has Gronk as his bust. You can find out who he has as his sleeper, comeback player, and stashing cash by checking out Michael Fabiano's preseason pro article on SI.com/fantasy.